Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Theology in the Raw. I have the opportunity to talk to my good friend, Dr. Gerry Breshears. He is an amazing individual. Many of you know and love Gerry. He has a PhD from Fuller Theological Seminary. He's a professor of theology at Western Seminary in Oregon and a pastor of pastors, an elder at Grace Community Church in Gresham, Oregon, and a happy great grandfather. This dude has been around discipling people like crazy. So I wanted to have Gerry on to talk about discipleship. But man, this guy, he's just a first of all, he's one of the funnest and most engaging people to talk to, but he also has a wealth of information. And so, as you'll see, I chase a lot of shiny objects here because Gerry just will say all kinds of things and knows so many things and can say some provocative things. And we went in various directions, but it's all under the large umbrella of what does it take to be a good discipler of other people. We also get into a bit about his role in the whole Mars Hill, Mark Driscoll explosion, breakup, whatever, over a decade ago. And he shares some interesting thoughts there. So we also include a discussion about women in ministry and leadership. That will be available to our Patreon supporters. If you want access to the last part of this conversation, then you need to become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/theology and Rob. Okay, let's dive into the one and only Dr. Gerry Breshears. All right, hey, Dr. Breshears, good to have you back.
Come on, Preston, give me a break. I don't like Dr. Breshears. He's not a nice guy.
How long have you been teaching at the college or seminary level?
I started at Biola in January of 1979.
Oh my
teaching
word.
men sin salvation. I am in my 46th year of teaching in accredited Christian education.
Golly. So just a couple years at the undergrad or a few years, but mostly at the seminary level, right?
Yeah, a year and a half at Biola. I was headed back to the Philippines to be a church planting Bible college missionary. Still think that would have been a great plan. God interrupted my life again and drugged me up to Western Conservative Baptist Seminary, as I tell. I said, no way in hell I'm going to that fightin' fundy place. Well, it was moving out of the fightin' fundy days, and of course now Western Seminary and a good evangelical seminary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm here. I came under deep protest, but I love what I do. Oh yeah.
Wait, so you came in as a controversial figure?
I was from Fuller Seminary in a school that saw Fuller Seminary as the ethic of doom and the end of Christianity. Now, It was slander, but that was the belief up here.
Yeah.
And my hiring was a step toward Western Conservative Baptists, who were known in those days, as emerging into the evangelical scene, which we did 6-7 years later. And we've been a major evangelical seminary for that whole time.
Did you face internal hostility from early on, at least?
Yes, from some.
Okay.
Yeah. There were some key issues, women in leadership, for example, where I began to just ask questions. I didn't really have a clear position at that point.
Okay.
And just asking questions was not okay in a fundamentalist environment. Now, those people soon were gone. Okay. And I survived.
What was there open dialogue? Was it just behind the scenes? You'd hear.
It was behind the scenes. No, there was only one right answer. Women do not teach men, period. Okay. And I began, no, wait a minute, and biblically and such. Anyway, that's a long conversation.
Is that what got you into? Because you've been, and we're going to, towards the end of this podcast, dig into this a little more. That's not the purpose of having you on, but but you've been studying women in ministry and leadership for a long time. Is this what kind of got you into it when you started to ask questions? It raised some ruckus?
When I came here, I made a commitment to investigate biblically and carefully key pastoral questions for the church. Okay. So I got pretty quickly into spiritual warfare. I got pretty quickly into women in leadership. I got really quickly into what leadership structures of the church should be. I got really quickly into models of sanctification, how in the world I deal with the sin in my life. I got really quickly into how human is Jesus, because we were way too deistic or too divine a Jesus, and he wasn't really human. But these are all of pastoral significance.
Yeah.
And I got drawn into all of them pretty quickly. And I have a position. I now have an opinion on everything, and occasionally right.
Well, you've been around the block for a while. You've been doing this for a while. You have a right. You have more of a right to have a opinion.
More of a right,
maybe even a strong opinion than a 24-year-old second-year seminary student.
Yes, sure. I had many opinions in those days, but I also knew there's a lot of things I didn't know. Things like providence. I was holding a Calvinist view of providence in those days because that's the only thing I ever heard. But I knew good and well that the biblical passages for God ordains all things, it's just not there. But that was something I put on the back shelf for about 5-6 years. Because I knew it was there, I just hadn't found them yet. And then I discovered, no, they're really not there. So now I'm a famous Calminian.
How would you
way to different people?
Well, so on providence, I brought you on to talk about discipleship.
We'll get there.
You opened up like 17 cans of worms, and I see shiny objects.
That's
all
my
over
model
the
of discipleship, Preston.
Okay,
that's my model of discipleship: is to open up questions and lay foundations carefully, biblically. What Bible says, we have to follow it, which is very controversial these days. But where the Bible is silent, it leaves us freedom to be spirit-led and wise. And you can have an opinion, but you're not allowed to say as the Bible says. That's a key foundation of my discipleship model, is that very issue. Where the Bible speaks prescriptively, we have to follow it. And that's very controversial because the Bible really says some hard things about wealth and power and sexuality and those kinds of things. Where the Bible's ambiguous or silent, you don't get to say as the Bible says. You get to say as my church tradition says. That's fine. That's a key factor in my discipleship model, is that very issue.
Can we go back just quickly, providence? Because this is a question I get asked all the time. And I honestly, I feel like I wrestled with God's providence early on in my, I would say seminary, a little bit post-seminary, but it hasn't become a topic that I've dove into at all. So I think we come from similar, I know, Greg Boyd keeps telling me I should too.
Well, Greg and I famously disagree.
But so how do you, so you said God does not ordain everything. Can you unpack your understanding of God's providence?
There are 3 base models of providence. Well, 4 if you count Greg's. God ordains everything for his greater glory and our ultimate good. That's the typical Calvinist view. The typical Arminian view is God allows all things for the sake of free loving relationship. So he allows evil because he wants a genuine yes. Greg Boyd is God cannot know the outcome of free moral decisions, so his plan is developing in concert with our choices. And then my view is God is at war with evil, using good as his primary weapon to overcome it. But sometimes he ordains down to the details. Sometimes God is a Calvinist, and sometimes he allows things to happen, Job and Satan, and so sometimes God's an Arminian. But his base model is he is at war with evil, but he uses good as his primary weapon to overcome it, which is so dang inefficient from my view. But it also means some people become followers of Jesus Christ.
Now, your position doesn't seem necessarily at odds with those other views. Like, I think Greg would probably agree with that God is at war against evil.
Well, the point we disagree on, I think God does know the outcome of free moral decisions.
Okay.
And he thinks he can't know those things. That's a key to his open theism model. I agree with much of what Greg says. And we've been buddies in the past. We've not had much overlap, but I've got several other, my favorite heretics are open theists. We'd laugh at each other, yeah.
The last time I saw Greg Boyd was a couple months ago at the Exiles conference. I didn't actually talk to him, but he gave a breakout session, and then he also is a drummer in a hard rock band or a classic rock band. And I saw him. It was an after party at the conference, and we went and I saw him play drums, and he's really, really good. He's a great
Greg's
drummer.
A great guy. Yeah. I just on the Theology in the Raw a couple of years ago, Joey Dodson if you will, smoked him out to be a universalist, which he has to be by his position.
Huh, interesting. I think I'm not sure where he's at on that. I think he's open to.
He admitted on stage he's a
did he?
universalist. He has to be.
Huh.
God cannot export violence in his view.
All right, yeah.
So everybody eventually has to come to be a Christian. And he said as much on the stage. Joey did a great job of interacting with him.
Didn't he? Joey's sneaky, man. And he's got a photograph.
Yes.
He's got a photographic memory. And so I don't know. Do you remember? I mean, he didn't go out with any notes.
No.
But he was quoting verbatim paragraphs from other authors, and he just memorizes it. It's insane. I don't know how he does
See, that's what I love is respectful dialogue between people who disagree on these things. Again, that's a key point of my discipleship model. If you're going to talk about another view, go to the very best proponent of the view and listen to him firsthand, personally, if you possibly can.
So you've been integrating that in the people you're discipling, whether it's formally, informally, in a classroom, 1-on-1, 1-on-3.
Absolutely.
This is a foundational piece.
Absolutely.
Has it always been that way for you? Has that always been a value?
Yes. The respectful dialogue within the evangelical guardrails.
Okay.
By that I mean the World Evangelical Alliance statement type thing. So I don't have respectful dialogues of people who deny that Jesus is Emmanuel, God in the flesh. I may, but I'm not required to do it because many times they're wolves in sheep clothing who pretend to be Christian and they're not.
This question came up in a dialogue I had recently. I might have been on the podcast. I can't remember, but because I with you, I'm a massive fan of steel manning, listening, curiosity. But then when I read like 2 Peter 2 or Jude or even Jesus and a couple of the 7 churches, Paul on occasion. I mean, Jude doesn't have much space for respectful dialogue with what you would consider
within
false
the evangelical
teachers.
guardrails. That's why I keep saying that. When somebody is questioning biblical perspectives, then I have to say, wait a minute. And, many times they're deceptive in what they do. They're literally satanic in what they're doing. They're asking what seem to be honest questions or not. I call them out and hard if I can.
And not, I was going to say, Jude and Peter, they're not dealing with just new converts who are, wrestling with hard questions. These are active false teachers leading people astray.
And boy, are they around today. There's a lot of them. And they're getting way too much friendly listening. And that's why there's so much deconstructing going on, is they're raising questions and they're saying, well, the church hurt you, therefore you can dump Jesus. Well, boy, talk about a leap of logic. Of course the church hurt you. It hurt everybody. Talk to any pastor. Of course the church hurt you. It shouldn't, and there is definitely intentional church hurt, which is evil. But the idea that church hurt you, therefore you can dump Jesus, see, that's a false teacher. You got to call them out.
Do you see that increasing these days?
Absolutely.
Really? Well, why is that?
Because the narrative is churches hurt people. It's an abusive organization, and that narrative gets a huge amount of press today. Not only in the liberal, the anti-Christian stuff, but it's also in newsletters for Christian leaders. It's usually about some church who's got a pastor's been abusing kids in his church or has a background in it, and nobody's telling redemption stories. They're telling abuse stories. See, that's the serpent at work. There are amazing redemption stories. They do not make the news feeds.
I talk to my buddy Patrick Miller about this all the time. He's a pastor. I think you know Patrick. And he says the same thing. He says because so much of the abuses are publicized, he's experienced the last few years such a profound distrust in leadership. And he's like, look, we're not perfect, whatever, but our whole pastoral team is like super humble. We're not abusing kids. We're not perfect by any stretch, but we don't match those headlines. And so what it's doing is creating this narrative that when 50 to 80% of the headlines you read are of all these abuse allegations and legitimate cases.
And realities,
people think 50 or 80% of pastors are like doing these things when it might realistically be 1 to 2 to 3%, maybe 5% or whatever.
It's not that much. But see, again, part of my discipleship model is tell the redemption stories. Now, be sure they're really redemption stories. But in typical churches today, we no longer have testimonies of redemption stuff. It's just not part of this typical evangelical liturgy. We've got to tell redemption stories. It's what Jesus is about. But we get caught off into fighting with somebody who has a different view of, say, providence or women in leadership or something like that, and we publicly fight about those things. We get into critiquing culture instead of telling the story of the beauty of the self-giving God. See, again, that's part of my discipleship model. Quit critiquing culture. I mean, do it. But your main thing is to tell the story, the beautiful story, the self-giving God, the self-sacrificing God who comes to us and calls us to be like him as self-giving, self-sacrificing people who serve. I mean, that's a key point of my discipleship model is what are the stories you tell? It's very chic to critique the culture and relatively easy to do.
Yeah.
But it's a waste of time. Now, there's a point to it, but the heart of what we do is tell the beauty of the self-giving, self-sacrificing God who comes and helps us do those same kinds of things.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. How do we balance being honest with the negative stories, with the pastors that have been spiritually
Right.
or physically or sexually abusive, the cover-ups. I mean, there is, a decent amount of junk. And
Absolutely.
in the past that hasn't been called out. So how do we balance like calling out the stuff that needs to be called out without giving the perception that this is the overwhelming majority of pastors or churches? Is it just tell more redemptive?
What you do is my church Gresham East is in East Multnomah County, Gresham Community Church in Gresham, or Grace Community Church in Gresham. If I go to all the churches that are in a 10-mile radius of my own church, how many of those pastors and churches are godly, discipling, positive, helpful, community-involved people? Probably 95%. Okay, tell 95% redemption stories and then ruthlessly call out the 5% that are evil.
Okay.
But, balance out what's actually going on in your community. And what we do, we're pain magnify. To use C.S. Lewis, pain is the magnaphone of God. And we're pain oriented. We forget good things quickly, remember painful things forever. And again, we've got to tell the redemption stories. And I love the picture of pastors who got off into bad stuff. We've got a guy in our church who was a pastor. He was accused, did jail time for abusing kids.
Wow.
In the past. He's a redemption story. Now we have careful limits on what he can do in our church as a registered sex offender. I mean, very careful limits, which he fully agrees to. And, but I visited him in prison repeatedly because he abused a lot of kids. And he's out. That was way in the past. And he's a repentant, godly man. And now he's very careful in what he does because he never wants to cause offense. Let's tell the redemption stories. And we typically don't do it.
Would you say, so wait, is he a pastor now?
No.
So would you say that's forever off limits for him
he's
now?
off. He'll never be a pastor again in the sense of any official thing.
Okay.
He works in what I would call a Christian nonprofit.
Okay.
And he does not have, he's no longer a registered sex offender. That's expired now. But he still does not work with kids. He works with adults. And he's very careful in his context with kids. He's never, ever alone with a kid or even close to that. He's a very effective Christian nonprofit guy. And key leaders know his full story. And most of the people in the organization know his full story because it's no secret.
How would his victims from many years ago, would they, trying to formulate my question, like would they be okay with holding him up as kind of like a hero, or like here's a positive story of repentance, and gosh, he's a good guy now, he's clean, or
Yeah,
is
I
that
can't answer that question because I never talked to any of
yeah
them. I have talked to people who've been abused by pastors because I do a lot of that kind of work too, a lot of
yeah
it. And what they do is if somebody is open and honest with what they've done and completely accept responsibility for what they do, none of the victimizer, it's your fault kind of stuff that's so common, is they are actually glad for redemption stories, but they won't be friends with that person probably.
sure.
And I get
So
it.
the problem is when it's sort of whitewashed, downplayed, or
Yep.
within 18 months they're back in the ministry, and
Yep.
like people celebrate them while the
Yep.
victim's just left with this pain, and this
Yep.
pastor now is a hero again because look how humble and repentant he is. Maybe
Yep.
that's what I was thinking of.
That's the guy who
Yeah.
needs to take it behind the barn and just beat the dickens out of him. Let me show you what you made of the pea. And I have very strong feelings about this. But I also know some genuine redemption stories. And well, Paul, this guy that had kind of a significant impact in the early church, he sat next to people whose kids he had murdered a few years earlier. How would you like to be a mom or the son or the daughter of somebody Paul had killed or tortured? We've got to learn how to rebuild. And I work with church abuse situations. I'm working with 2 major ones right now.
Really?
Yeah. I don't ever ignore the abuse. Deal with it. And in many cases, if there really has been abuse by the pastor, that pastor needs to resign, expect full responsibility of what he did. Most don't. And I've got a whole thing on this. Number 1 is full confession, absolute full confession, verified by many cases a polygraph, because that's only to really get at those kind of things. And then step number 2, once you get that full confession, no, I'm sorry, no, please forgive me, none of that kind of stuff at all, 0, none, just full confession. I did, it was wrong, I've done it. Then the next thing is, are they willing to go compassionately into the life of the person who will accept and live in their pain without going to quick fixes? I mean, it happens. It's rare, but I can point to somewhere that's happened.
What is it? Is there something about the pastoral position that, I guess, let me ask the first question. Do you think this is, again, whether it's emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual abuse, is it more prevalent among leaders in the church than leaders in other organizations?
I actually
And
don't think so, but they're violating a sacred oath when they do it.
sure.
If a corporate leader does it, they're not violating a sacred oath. A pastor is violating a sacred oath. So there's a deeper level of hurt, and there's a much higher level of responsibility. Sure. And the power that comes with a pastoral position is often not recognized by pastors. They do, like I started the show, hey, I'm just Gerry, come on. Well, actually not. I'm not just Gerry. I'm a longtime professor of theology. I'm a longtime elder in the church. I'm a pastor of pastors. I'm not just Gerry. I carry enormous power.
No matter how much you wish, no matter how much you don't position yourself that way, you just simply are going to carry that.
I have to recognize the power that I have for who I am and the positions I hold, and I have to be very careful because I can dominate people in a heartbeat. I'm Enneagram 8, high D, put in whatever you want, type A, I'm all those things, but I've got to do it compassionately with a serving heart.
Yeah. Do you think there's something about the pastoral position that lends itself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Abusers gravitate to pastoral positions. People of the Lie, great book. People go there because there's little accountability. You can, if you look nice, it's almost unlimited what you can do behind the curtain. How many people actually really check up on their pastors other than ask them questions, which is good. And the fact is, most pastors can do all kinds of stuff with no accountability whatsoever.
I've often thought, if somebody has a more narcissistic personality, maybe many of our churches, their measure of success is like a
Yep.
is like a recipe to attract because a
Absolutely.
narcissist can grow a great church.
Absolutely.
Oh,
A
they can
high-functioning
preach well.
narcissist
They can
often
get
makes
people
a
on.
good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They can get people on their side. They can motivate
hmm
people. They could. I mean, that which is
Yep.
a dangerous thing
Yep.
for a pastor.
Yep.
Hmm. I didn't read that book. Who's that guy when narcissism comes to church? Chuck
Chuck
DeGroat.
DeGroat.
I haven't read that book
Chuck
yet, but
DeGroat. Yeah, he's done a lot of work around
yeah.
narcissistic pastors and such. I think a lot of people read his material and look at a powerful personality who doesn't always do things my way and just label them narcissistic,
Hmm.
which is, it's as great a sin as being a narcissist.
Huh.
A guy don't like, oh, you're a narcissist, this kind of stuff. And it's a cheap labeling and dismissing type stuff.
Oh,
And I
so
don't
do you
mean
think
to
that?
downplay what Chuck
Yeah.
does. I know him only casually. And he's done some excellent research on narcissism in the church.
Do you think the label narcissism is thrown around a little bit too broadly then?
Oh, all the time.
Oh, okay.
All the time. There's a clinical definition of narcissism as a personality disorder, and it's absolutely real. I've run some out of the ministry. But narcissistic tendencies, most powerful leaders have narcissistic tendencies.
Okay.
Which is high drive, ability to inspire loyalty, those kinds of things. Narcissists do that in a pathological way. Strong leaders do those in a good way.
Well, that's good. That's a good difference. So you've do you know how many, let's say, pastors or professors that you have discipled on some level? Maybe not from not from a distance, like they read your book or something, but like you have had a personal relationship with them. You know their first and last name, whether it's in a classroom or maybe it's from a distance. I mean, I would put myself in this category. I've never taken a class from you, but I would consider you one of my mentors. So using like me as a baseline example, all the way up to like people you've really invested in personally. Do you know what that number is? I don't care about numbers. I'm just trying to get my mind around like how many people you have had a real personal influence on.
I don't have any idea what the number would be. If you go down to the level, the influence that you and I have as longtime friends and conversation partners and such, you'd probably be up in the 2,000 or 3,000 level.
Yeah.
Because I hack into people's lives for fun and profit. I've yet to find the profit, but I've had a lot of fun as well as some painful stuff. No, I came here in 1980. I still have people in my first classes. Judy Glanz, for example, was Judy Murray back in the day. We've had a long, deep relationship this entire time. She's one of my adjunct profs now, great friend. Her daughter is somebody I've done the same thing to, who's just finished her PhD in Scotland. And I've just a lot of people. Now, when I talk about people I've had deep personal influence, where it's been on a personal level, that would probably be in the, couple hundred. That would be people like, some of the big names. mean, the funny thing is Tim Mackey, when the Bible Project started, nobody knew who Tim Mackey was. And I was a key influence, deep discipleship. Tim and I have a very close relationship. And he and Jessica and their kids. When this whole thing started out, they had me involved in Bible Project, but at least somebody's heard of Gerry. Now, you know Tim Mackey? Wow. I love it. It's perfect. Yeah.
Well, I first heard about your name because you co-wrote some books with Mark Driscoll.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. And I remember like, who's this Gerry guy? And I'm like, oh, he's a professor. Oh, he was, Mark's professor, whatever.
Yeah.
Other name, John Mark Comer is there, Evan Wickham and
Yep. All those four have been people I've had deep personal relationship with.
But the only reason why, again, and you and I don't care about numbers, and some people might say it's kind of icky even mention. It's just wherever I go, 25 to 50% of the people I meet, I feel like you've had some influence, if not like a really direct.
I've had the huge privilege. Well, Guy Gray, who's one of those people I've had deep personal influence with, he's retired now. He came over and planted River West here in Lake Oswego. Uh, we had gone out to lunch, did a lot of stuff together, and he dropped me off here at Western. And as he's coming off, he's got this prophetic personality type thing. And he looked at me across, and as I was getting out of the passenger side of the car, and said, "Gerry, quit your job and become a church theologian." And I said, "Guy, I'm not going to quit my job at Western." But what happened is I recognized that he did absolutely have a prophetic voice, and I very consciously received what he was actually saying. "Gerry, you must put more time in being pastor of pastors." Up to
Okay.
that point, I've been an equipper of up-and-coming pastors. And I'm using pastor in a non-technical sense. And I realize the thing I need to do, and I've been doing it for 25 years now, is to be pastor of pastors, which is deep influence in the lives of people who are already pastoring, including some senior guys who've been men and women. Oh, Judy would be an example. And I've got a number of others like that, men and women who are in official pastoral positions, that I get to have a shaping influence in their life. And when they are in a tight spot or a difficult decision, "Hey, Gerry, can we talk?" I love it.
Yeah.
And that's that pastoral mentoring, discipling role that by God's grace I have in a lot of people's lives.
How do you because saying yes to one person means you're saying no to somebody else, right? There's
Absolutely.
only so much time. How do you balance that? How do you determine this? I'm going to say yes to this, but I have to say no to this person. Here's a great need that just came my way, but I don't have the bandwidth to invest in this. Is
Part of
that
it I have to
difficult?
let people I really love graduate. John Mark Comer, you've seen him a little bit. When I first met John Mark, I had deep influence in his life. That was 2010. These days, John Mark has graduated, if I can say that. We don't talk very often.
Okay.
He's really busy, but he's graduated. Now, if we get together, it'll go deep and fast with Tammy as well. But I'm no longer a major influence in John Mark's life. He's graduated. So I have to let people I really love and really care about graduate and no longer have a significant influence in their life because there's new people coming behind. So there's a guy here in town, Andrew Damasio, who is an up-and-coming young pastor, Rose Church, and I'm now having that kind of deep influence in his life because John Mark has graduated. But I can only have those deep relationships with a few people.
Yeah.
And so I have a big rock philosophy. I've got a jar here, a jar of life. I need to put in the big rocks first. And one of the big rocks is family. I need to have time to go hang with my daughter on Mother's Day. So Sherry and I went down there. Sherry, of course, is a big one. And some of those. But once the big rocks are in, there's a lot of room for little rocks, if you will, which would be a coffee conversation that lasts 90 minutes in somebody's life 2 or 3 times a year. I can have a lot of influence because I immediately get to the hard stuff. I don't waste my time talking about sports or later movies. I don't watch movies. I spend no time watching movies.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's a waste of time. I could be investing in people. It's not that I don't like
Yeah.
movies. I love movies. I just
Yeah.
rather spend my time with Andrew. I'm using him because I'll be at his church tomorrow night, and his dad just died, Frank Damasio, major pastor here in the Portland area, and I'm having a lot of influence in Andrew's life. I love it. He's one of my newbies.
Hmm. How do you really practically, just on the ground, what does it look like when you get together with coffee for somebody for 90 minutes? Maybe you know them a little bit, but you're seeing this as, for lack of better terms, a discipleship opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
What does disciple Gerry look like in those moments?
Question number 3 is we already have a point on the agenda because I know them well to know where their pain is. And I say, okay, what are you doing about? And I'd go in really deep to foundational issues really quickly. I get very personal really fast in a very positive, compassionate, supportive, directive way. I waste no time talking about sports and movies when I do these things. I mean, there's a certain level of chit chat, but not much. I'm there to I'm there to be a pastor in your life. Let's get on with it.
Hmm.
So I spend very little time. So within 5 minutes, we're into really significant stuff.
Okay. So you're like you want to ask, you want to find out where that pain, like where's the struggle, where's the pain. You're
Yep.
not necessarily. I
What's the
mean,
pain? What's the hope? What's the thing that's bending your soul right now? And then another thing I do is it's a discipline, but I'm fully present with you when I'm with you.
mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, they're always mentally checking their phone or something like that. I'm fully present with the person for the time that we have. And that's a personality thing, but it's also something I've really honed, is how to be fully present with somebody in the moment and keenly interested in them. I just rebuked a guy yesterday. Well, Brenna Blaine, she's been on your thing several times.
Oh, Brenna.
Saturday, she was a speaker at a Regeneration Conference here in Portland. And so I asked to be her guide because she's a speaker. Well, I was also a speaker, but not at the same time. So I asked to be her guide because we've got a deep personal relationship. And so 15 minutes before she went on for her session, I went by appointment. I found her because she's a very popular person. We went off by ourselves, and I spent about 8 minutes going where I knew her issues were. I actually rebuked a hostile voice in her spirit. It wasn't demonic. It was something else. I rebuked it in the name of Jesus, full on spiritual presence with her. She received it. I prayed Holy Spirit encouragement for her, and she did an awesome job. And then I connected with her again after the speech, and we've done a little bit of texting. That's the sort of thing I do routinely because I know her, I know what she's wrestling with, and I want to be a pastoral presence at a key point in her life. And that's just happened. And she's an awesome young lady who's wrestling with some really hard stuff, as she's talked about on Theology in the Raw.
Yeah, she's got an incredible voice and has been through, golly. You talk about somebody whose strength and resilience has been forged in the fires of
Huge.
trials, and yeah.
Everybody needs to get her book. Can I ask that?
Yeah, so good.
It's very personal, but how hard questions get you to the real God.
Her power is in her honesty, I feel like.
Yeah.
Extremely honest without, I mean, you're talking earlier about just kind of an unhealthy victim church hurt, that there could be an unhealthy perspective on that, but she has a very honest but healthy perspective, I believe. Yeah.
And she mentions my name too often.
She what?
She mentions my name too often. She's done it on your show. Because I do have this influence. Now, I'm not the number one influencer in life by quite a bit. Yeah. There are 2 or 3 others that have a primary influence in life. I have a secondary influence, but I want to maximize that for the discipleship model I do because I want her to do extremely well. And if my name never gets mentioned, I'm totally happy. If it does, I'm kind of okay with it.
Are you, for how many people whose lives you're involved in, how many people you've influenced, would you consider yourself like an extrovert? Like, do you enjoy people or do you love people because it's the right thing to do? You know what I mean?
On the typical introvert, extrovert, I come out right in the middle.
Okay.
I have to have my private time. I guard that really highly for reflection, for prayer, for listening to God, those kind of things. But I also really, really, really enjoy the impact I can have in people's lives to help them do better. And that's not just pastors. That's people who are, I'm working with some people. Later today, I'll be working with a couple who they're at the bottom end of hurt. They're in big trouble. I'm amazed that they're even alive. They're so bad off. So I'm investing in really at the bottom people as well as at the top people.
So you're not, okay. So you're not right now, you're not just focused on being a pastor of the pastors. You're still
working with some of the worst hurts ever.
Really?
I don't talk about those openly.
Yeah.
Unless they're in the past, except in the vaguest of ways. So I have an appointment this evening with a couple, and they are in terrible trouble. Pastor friend of mine referred them to me. And so I'm investing time there too. I doubt that they'll ever be, high level, pastoral level influencers in church, but I just don't know. Right now, I know that I want them to get free from horrific difficulty. I'll just leave it at that.
If you've ever wanted to dive deeper into the ancient languages that the Bible was originally written in, now is the perfect time to start. Whether you're seeking a deeper understanding of Scripture or you're simply curious about the roots of the text, learning biblical Greek and Hebrew can unlock insights you have never imagined. I cannot tell you how much the text was opened up to me when I started to learn the original languages. And look, I understand not everybody's able to do this, okay? But if you do have the time, then I would highly, highly recommend learning Greek and Hebrew. Kairos Classroom has designed an entirely new curriculum that makes learning these ancient languages accessible and, yes, exciting for anyone, whether you're just getting started or you already have some background in biblical studies. I want you to hear from a Kairos Classroom student and fellow Theology in the Raw listener about her recent experience.
Hey, my name is Joy, and I found Kairos Classroom when I heard about it from Preston at Theology in the Raw. When I signed up for Kairos Classroom, I was looking for something affordable, flexible, and fun without sacrificing on quality. I'm 6 weeks into Greek 1, and it has absolutely ticked off all the boxes. If you are hearing this, you are likely tuning in to Theology in the Raw, just like I do. If digging deeper into the original languages of the Bible is something that intrigues you, I'd really encourage you to visit the Kairos Classroom website and check out if any of their programs would be a good fit for you. It'll be time well spent.
So I want to encourage you to take the first step in your journey to gain a deeper understanding of Scripture by booking a free trial lesson with Kairos. Just go to kairosclassroom.com, okay? kairosclassroom.com, click on the book a free trial lesson button and pick a 30-minute time slot that is convenient for you. It's 100% free, no excuses. And it's a great way to meet a teacher and gain a better understanding of how easy, convenient, and fun learning with Kairos will be. This episode is brought to you by Seminary Now. Seminary Now is a subscription-based streaming video platform that delivers exclusive biblical, theological, and practical ministry training from a diverse group of leading educators and thought leaders. It's become one of the go-to resources for pastors, church leaders, and lay Christians who are serious about ongoing learning in our increasingly complex world. Seminary Now's 80-plus streaming courses and 10-plus live online classes allow learners to have access to world-class scholarship and cutting-edge ministry training anywhere, anytime. These courses are taught by leading professors and authors like Dennis Edwards, Michael Bird, David Fitch, Nijay Gupta, this is like a Theology Raw all-star team, Carmen Imes, Sandy Richter, Derwin Gray, Esau McCauley, Lynn Cohitt, Craig Keener, John Walton, and many, many others. Topics range from Bible, theology, ministry, and contemporary issues. Classes they're broken up into short videos so you can learn at your own pace, and there's new courses being released every month. The courses are available either on your smartphone or on Apple TV. You get unlimited access to all the courses for just $15 a month, which is billed annually. There's just so much here. I would highly encourage you to at least go check it out. Seminarynow.com, okay, to find out more. That's seminarynow.com. And for a limited time, you can use the discount code TITR and save 30%. Okay, save 30%. The discount code is TITR to save 30%. Go check it out. So over the last 45 years, have you seen changes in the kinds of challenges or maybe the depth of challenges that people are wrestling with?
Yes, definitely.
Is it due to the internet and porn or all these new things that didn't exist 40 years ago? Or is it more than that?
Things in our culture, the evil of social media. I don't. We just had one of the presenters at Together PDX. Tatiana, I've forgotten her. I did not catch her name. I've got to go back and get it. But she works with Young Life and just amazing leader. And she named it so well. In our culture today, and I'm talking about the Gen Z type culture, so-called. In our culture today, you cannot make a mistake. You cannot make a mistake. And as soon as you do, you're mocked, ridiculed. You may be canceled, but it's worse for the other stuff that happens. You cannot make a mistake in today's culture. So the terror is, I'm not enough. And that's the question in our culture is, are you enough? And the answer is no. So you gloss everything and make it look like you're this confident thing. And it's just absolutely toxic culture today. And that's out of a social media culture that didn't exist in 2005, barely existed in 2010. But it's front and center on everything right now.
If somebody is not on social media, do they still experience that? Or is it just those? Oh,
Absolutely.
Really? So social media, it doesn't just exist on social media. It's just simply exacerbated because of social media.
Yeah. Okay. And people are not personally on social media will be mocked on social media. It's a now there's great good that comes out of social media for sure. But the dark side of social media is horrible.
Yeah.
And that's fairly new. And so young leaders have to face the reality that you have to have a social media presence. You just can't be a leader today without a social media presence. But it's a toxic and extremely dangerous environment. You've got to learn how to navigate it well. I'm an old man. I will never navigate social media. To me, social media is a place for grandkids and Mongolia trips and things like that.
Yeah. Are you on social media? You on Facebook?
Yes. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram.
But you don't, it's more just personal, family kind of stuff. You're not debating
I don't
theology
enter into any of the theological debates. I get drug into them occasionally by my friends like Evan Wickham, who tags me on his stuff. But no, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and such are not a place for me to do theological discussion, because you just can't do what I do on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok.
Because that's for you. Do you think would your advice be objectively universal to people?
No.
Do you think there is a place?
Look
debate?
at you, Preston, for crying out loud. You're having enormous positive influence through social media in various ways. Now, I don't know, you're a super professional, but I look at some of the guys who are, just name some of the big influencers. Tim Mackey. He personally is not on social media, but he's having huge impact through all the social media platforms out of Bible Project. And it's incredible what he's doing, but he personally has zero social media.
I'm not really active like on Twitter. Every now and then, but my rule has been don't engage with people. I break that from time to time, and then I repent and then go back to just, not engaging.
Yes,
I'm rarely on
get
Facebook.
into any of the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok discussions. Zero, none.
Yeah.
And if somebody tries to get it onto one of my feeds, I delete them. I don't want those. If people look at my page and I'm active on Facebook and Instagram, if somebody brings one of their fights onto my space, I'll delete them immediately. You don't get to do that on my page. Do it on your own.
Yeah, that's good. I see very little. Well, one of my truisms is don't give a thin answer to a thick question.
Amen.
If there's a complicated issue, your 240 characters on Twitter is not going to do it. Facebook allows for a little more, but I would say 90% of any kind of debate is not made in good faith. People are just trying to win. They're not reasonable. You don't know. Half the time you don't even know who you're talking with. Their wife could have left them. Their kids might have hate them. They could be on pills and meds, and I don't know what they're going through. Like they could be lashing out and taking it out on me, and you just don't know the context. If it's somebody you actually do personally know, and they're a good faith dialogue partner, and then you engage on a good faith conversation on Facebook, I think maybe that might be the 10%. Right. Where it's profitable, but I just see it as most times both parties walk away not better people, and clarity is typically not given. It's usually just a lot of vitriol. So yeah.
And that one of the very, very public people right now is Mark Driscoll. and I did have a major influence in his life.
Yeah.
Very, very personal. Spent a lot of time in his home, him and Grace and their kids, from about 2004 to about 2010. And we never had a falling out. We just went separate ways. Unfortunately, he went in a not good way, and the dark side of his character came out front, and of course blew up Mars Hill in 2014 and all that. But that's a space where people very openly and positively said, I know what's going on in Mark Driscoll's life. They had never met the man. And there are people who've made, and I'll be the very, very, I won't name names, but there are people making a lot of money off the Mark Driscoll image, which then they morph into their own. This is particularly true while he was front page news back in the 2010, 2014 era. There were bloggers who were making seriously a lot of money off of trashing Mark Driscoll.
Yeah, I think I know some of the ones you're talking about.
And there is a dark side to Mark. I mean, I've said this to his face.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping, and I just don't know, that the current Mark Driscoll is actually a redemption story. I don't know because I don't have that personal relationship with him anymore. I'm hoping he is a genuine redemption story. I just don't know. I don't have that backside. I see the public side, but I don't see the backside. And I see the Driscoll haters who are still doing their thing by telling things that I know for a fact are not true.
Oh, wow.
But it sells well.
Interesting. So you don't have any contact, you haven't talked to him since 2014? Or?
Oh, no. We've had, after he went to Scottsdale, Mark and I had a 3-hour off-the-record, very, very personal conversation. And I know a lot, and I was around for a good part of that, what was happening at Mars Hill, and I was raising concerns. Hello! And I was officially part of his accountability team. And if I text him, I'll get a quick response. I haven't sat down with him personally for, probably 3 years. But no, but I don't know what's going behind the scene at Trinity Church. I see the public side.
Yeah.
And it's multi-generational, multi-ethnic, and a lot of people coming to Christ. It's a political view that I'm not in favor of. I've said all these things public, but not critical. That's just dialogue type stuff. I hope it's a redemption story, but I can't say at this point. I can point to some other people who are genuine redemption stories because I know them.
Wouldn't genuine redemption have to go back and repair a lot of the damage?
It's hard to do.
Done?
It takes two to tango. That was one of my things back after 2014. By 2016, I was mediating some conversations off the record behind the curtain with people who were hurt, had gone back and forth. And that's a role that I do. And there are a number of people who have a decent relationship with Driscoll where they've been hurt going both directions. It takes a lot of work to do.
So it wasn't just one-sided. It wasn't.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Interesting.
No. That's the thing. It's extremely complicated story, and people come in and do simple, this is what happened, as if they were in the room when that whole thing blew up. And I could name specifics. I won't. But there were absolutely some in the room blow-ups that if you weren't in the room, you cannot know what happened. But I can tell you what happened, and they tell motivations and such, which they just can't know. Those people need to shut up. They do not know what happened. They know the social media side of it. They do not know the real side of it.
Did you listen to Mike Cosper's The Rise and Fall? So what did you think about that?
I'll be very straight up. The first 3 or 4 sessions were outstanding.
Okay. They
showed both the power and the problem side by side, but then it quickly became this is an evil thing, and it got away from the nuanced story and became it became a narrative of church abuse. That is no longer a careful, thoughtful interaction with the Mark Driscoll story, and became a story of church abuse that told many people's stories.
Yeah.
So it was a true story, but it's no longer a nuanced story of what happened. That's the thing that I've been curious. I've never met Mike Cosper, so I can't say much. But he was on staff there in Louisville at Journey Church with it was a guy who was as bad an abuser as Mark Driscoll, who was fired by the church, and I was actually a consultant in some of the stuff that happened around that. Mike was on staff. He could have told the story of Journey Church and how an abusive pastor became lead, but see, it involved him in all kinds of personal relationships, it seems to me. And he'd get 25 views about Journey Church. He got I don't know how many thousands talking about Mars Hill because it's a much more public organization. And Mark Driscoll's he knows how to manipulate the internet. But see, to tell that inner story where he really knew what was going on is extremely complex. And I don't mean to be critical of what Mike did, but I just wonder what he would have done of Journey Church and Daniel Montgomery. There he could have told a very nuanced, inside, but very difficult story of all the difficult relationships that were there.
Yeah. He did. I think he did reach out to Mark, didn't he?
Mark, you see, the thing is, he didn't reach out to me, but had he done that, I would have said, Mike, I really appreciate what you're doing, but that story is so complicated. You cannot tell what happened there in a 15-minute or 5-minute glimpse. You just can't tell the story. It's too complicated. Now, the early thing, one of my favorites was Tim Smith was leading one of the first open baptism things, and it was going so well, their song set was gone, and he's desperately trying to think, what are we going to sing next? And somebody yelling, Tim, Tim, Tim! His daughter was getting baptized back behind him, and he didn't know it. Now, there was some stuff that happened in that open baptism that was not good, let's just put it that way. But see, he was telling a complicated story that was nuanced and showed both the power and the problem together. But it quickly got back into stuff that was the nuance got lost for the story of an abusive church. And again, I'm not being critical of, but the show went off into a different direction than just here's what happened at Mars Hill, and talked about the nature of abusive churches. And I think on the whole, he did a good job of showing the danger of abusive churches. But it was no longer a picture of the complex, difficult story of Mars Hill. My view.
That's it.
And again, I've never talked to Mike, so I can't say.
Your view matters more than most people, in my opinion, because you have such deep inside history, which most people.
Was there. I was in the room for some of the things that were described, and I know for a fact they were just wrong.
Oh, wow.
They talked to certain people who had their perspective, but they weren't in the room. They knew Mark and they knew the dark side of Mark, but they didn't know. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
You've got to know the whole nuanced story, and that's difficult. It means personal involvement with key people, but it means a huge investment, and you cannot tell the whole story for people really understand what happened in the room. It's just too complicated.
Yeah. I know a few other people who you would know, I'm not going to name them publicly, but who were deeply invested in the church, either a leadership or a mentor figure to Mark.
And the pain that happened is the dark side of Mark's character came out. There were desperate hurt in people's lives. People I know really well are no longer practicing Christians.
Wow.
And a big piece of it was the betrayal that they felt from what happened in Mars Hill. And Mark was the center of that. He wasn't the only one.
My only exposure to Mark since then is every now and then I'll see some of his tweets on Twitter, and I would say I think they're pretty terrible. And
I don't follow Twitter, so I can't speak to those.
They're pretty bad. The political stuff is really clear. Like, he's very, very has integrated right-wing political views with Christian theology, which I would consider. I would say it's flat out idolatrous, and his tone is very, very arrogant and snarky, and it just. But again, You raise a great point.
Yeah, but
that's
as soon as you call it
facing
arrogant and snarky, you're putting a spin on a Driscoll personality, which certainly is a danger there. Now, whether he's actually arrogant and snarky or not, I can't say because I'm not there personally.
Yeah.
But that's putting a spin on a strong personality. And I'm very careful to do those.
Okay.
I'm careful to try to not to do those things if I don't have a personal relationship.
That's a
so
good
I'm
point.
kind of rebuking you, Preston.
Well, I'll receive that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I totally. Yeah.
Well, of course.
I would say, okay, here's what I would say is I would maybe if I see somebody tweeting several things that feel condescending or
then
portraying
say that feels snarky to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's because okay. Here's the base level I would go as I say that was probably unwise to say that in that way on social media. Whether it's a totally accurate repetition of your heart, I can't really say. I don't know you, but you probably should not say it on social media, which I've done too. So and people have told me that. I'm like, you know what, you're right.
What I would do is before I say that publicly, I want to go talk to him privately.
Yeah, I don't have access to that, but
you could.
I could talk to Mark Driscoll.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, you want to do it? I'll mediate it. Seriously.
Yeah,
that's another conversation.
Well, I immediately thought on the podcast, but there's so much history here and stuff that I'm not familiar with, so I don't know if I'd want to publicly
see that's
do
the issue
like
there. If you don't know the story, you can't tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wish other people be limited. I can't tell the story if I don't know the story.
Yeah. But private, I'd talk to anybody privately. That'd be a blast. Hey, I got a question from a patron here that's tuning in. It's kind of related to what we're talking. It goes back to what we were talking about way earlier, but it actually is related to Driscoll. So he says this. He says, one thing I would argue against is the idea that we are over-advertising the failures of the church leaders regarding the percentages, like maybe it's a tiny percentage, whatever. But what about those that have enormous reach? More than just the average faithful church leader. And he uses the example of Mark Driscoll, Ravi Zacharias, and others, that their abuse of power and authority has massive ripple effects.
Yes.
So like that, even though those two examples. And so Driscoll, Zacharias, that's only two people. I could find two faithful pastors in Kansas with 80 people in their church that have been faithful for 40 years.
Let's go to the parallel.
Yeah.
You want to Mark Driscoll? Okay, let's talk about a Tim Keller.
Okay.
Tim Keller has had enormous impact for good. We spend more time, too much time, it seems to me, with the Mark Driscoll, Ravi Zacharias, Robert Morris, and I tell the story, absolutely. But what we don't do nearly enough is tell the beauty of the story of a Tim Keller, a Rick Warren, J.D. Greer. I could name, these are, again, enormous influence pastors. Let's laud what they're doing, long and faithful. And we typically don't do that.
Max Lucado. Max
Lucado. Yeah.
I mean, we know him by his books, but he's been a faithful pastor for 50 years or something.
Yeah. And so let's balance the stories. And I'll stand by my thing. There's a whole lot more said about the Ravi Zacharias, Mark Driscoll, Robert Morris. Robert Morris is a more recent story. Enormous impact, but the deceptive stuff in his background, then he rightfully has been scrubbed. We need to tell those stories. Absolutely. The abusive pastor has to be called out, and ruthlessly. But let's also tell the beautiful stories of pastors, men and women who are leaders, who are sacrificing their own personal privileges for the sake of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let's tell those stories. Those are amazing, beautiful stories. I get to be involved in them.
That's good. Hey, Gerry, thanks for the conversation. Can you stick around for a little bit? And I got a few questions about women in leadership for you.
That I'm going to questions.
I have many questions, Gerry.
I got many opinions. Maybe we could get together. Sure.
All right. If you'd like to listen to the rest of our conversation about women in ministry and leadership, then just go to patreon.com/Theology Raw to join the Theology Raw community and get access to other premium content. Okay, I want to see what Gerry has to say about 1 Timothy 2-3.
This show is part of the Converge Podcast Network.